the processes for bringing about good practices. Because this one, this monument that we're going to discuss and the other monuments related to this example, they are Ottoman monuments, monuments from the Ottoman period of Greece. And Ottoman monuments are often not accepted as genuine parts of Greek cultural heritage. Because they are perceived as witnesses of a period of foreign rule and oppression. So we have that, but at the same time, these monuments constitute important traces of Greek history, and they can shed light on lived experience and centuries long at that, and ways of life. So one category of such monuments are these Ottoman baths, baths from the Ottoman period, because baths were very widespread in Ottoman Empire, and they were establishments that offered accessible and simple bodily pleasure, enhanced social hygiene. They were open to all the subjects of the empire, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And there's this question: how can those and other monuments from the period of Ottoman rule in Greece be revitalized in order to sustain cultural and economic activities in the framework of what we could call sustainable development? We faced these questions when we were surveying the Macedonian countryside in the framework of another Erasmus project, and we stumbled upon this hammam that you can see in the photo. It is a 16th century building near the southern shore of Lake Volvi, in Macedonia, northern Greece. And the site is easily accessible from the old national road just outside the old village of Apollonia, which is about 80 kilometers from Thessaloniki. And this bath, as well as two other buildings on the same site, they belong to the infrastructure of a small Ottoman town, the small Ottoman town of Yenipazar, Pazarouda in Greek, that was founded at the site of ancient Apollonia. And today the monument is abandoned, and I have a photo of the inside of the monument. Back in 1983, the municipality asked the Ephorate of Antiquities to create an archaeological park in the area, but the plan was abandoned because the monuments were found to be Ottoman. Because in the beginning they hoped that they could link these monuments to the Byzantine era, but they turned out to be Ottoman, so they abandoned the plan altogether. Then 20 years ago, in 2001, a restoration study was again carried out by assignment of the municipality, but that too was never implemented, and the complex remains largely silent. It is there, but there are no signs to give any information about the building's identity. And the only sign on site is this small plaque which deems the whole site as the bema of Apostle Paul. Bema is supposedly a smooth rock underneath this old century plane tree, where supposedly Apostle Paul delivered the sermon when he passed through the ancient city of Apollonia on his way to Thessaloniki. And this site, by virtue of it being a bema of Apostle Paul, attracts pilgrims in the framework of religious tourism. But the Ottoman monuments have not been in any ways linked to this touristic activity. Now, there are small Ottoman baths that have been successfully revitalized, and this is our second example in the photo. This one is a real good practice. It is a small Ottoman bath which has been integrated in the facilities of the mud baths of Crenides. Crenides is a very small it's the town near the archaeological site of the ancient city of Philippi, and the mud baths fall under the responsibility of the municipality of the city of Kavala. And the municipality has restored and renovated the Ottoman bath, which now functions as a hammam for the visitors of the modern bathing complex. And the integration of the Ottoman building it really adds to the appeal of the mud baths. So instead of just selling a product, they draw on the historical and cultural identity of the place and transform it into potential for sustainable development that offers enjoyment and knowledge at the same time. And this was not achieved without effort, because when we were there, we realized that there is a cluster of small private enterprises around and in mutual reliance with the mud baths of Crenides. And they seem to exemplify the understanding between municipal structures and strategies on the one hand, and local professionals on the other. Another example, and this one is stunning for other reasons, are the two Ottoman baths that have been incorporated in the modern bathing complex of Langadas near Thessaloniki. Again, Greek Macedonia, and in the photo you see the interior of these structures, and they are a very important example because these they are actually among the very few secular monuments that have been continuously used for the same purpose since the 15th century. And of course, the city of Kavala presents the example of revitalization, the grand scale example of revitalization that Aphrodite has just talked about, the Emirate, which came from being a forgotten monument of the Ottoman rule to a building that has become a landmark of the city and emphasizes its historical and cultural continuity. But let's go back to Ottoman baths. This time we go to the islands of the Aegean. This one is on the island of Lesbos in the region of Therma. There is a small modern spa there that makes use of the old indoor bathrooms of the Ottoman period with a vaulted ceiling. And lastly, the Ottoman baths of the island of Rhodes that operated until some years ago. I think that they are passing the vacuum just outside my door, which is very strange. I hope that this doesn't. Okay, they stopped. So let's go back to our first example, the Bath of Apollonia in northern Greece. So the restoration study of 2001 was meant to serve as the means to turn the monument into a museum of bathing culture. And there is such a museum in Greece, very good one at that, but it is situated in Athens. It is housed in the Ottoman bath complex in the district of Plaka. But that's a very different situation, because Plaka is at the center of Athens, at the epicenter of cultural tourism in Athens. So there are completely different prospects of sustainability for such a project. While a bath museum just outside the old National Road in the Macedonian countryside would be a very, very different situation. So this is why in two recent papers that we presented in a conference and in a postgraduate course, we argued for a genuine revitalization of the Ottoman bath, as in turning it again into a bath. And this is less far-fetched than it seems, because in the region of Apollonia, modern Apollonia, very near the Ottoman monuments that we are discussing, there is a modern bathing complex, the Apollonia Spa. Nowadays, this one is also closed down, but it is a very important thermal spring. So chances are that it is going to reopen under different direction. And the Ottoman bath could be attached to the modern complex in a way similar to the integration of the small Ottoman bath into the mud baths of Crenides that we also discussed. And in that case, one shouldn't have to invent any new branding for the area of Apollonia, because it is already well known as a focal point for thermal tourism in Thessaloniki and the nearby cities. On the contrary, the revitalization of the Ottoman bath eventually, with the addition of new services and products for the visitors, could rejuvenate thermalist activity with the added value of historical exploration and knowledge. And this could help the transition from old-fashioned thermalism into sustainable cultural and wellness tourism. And of course, when such proposals are put forth, we have to consider different the different perspectives that are going to be proposed at the same time. And when we were discussing this possibility, we were met with the reservations from the archaeologists, who were very doubtful about making an old, turning an old hammam into a modern bath. Of course, there are also the views of the local community to be taken into account in such efforts, and we will maybe have the opportunity to talk about this example some more when we are going to discuss stakeholders later on in this session. But for now, I'm leaving you at that. I have just presented my case. I hope it has given you some ideas, and maybe we can further discuss along the lines of similar cases later on. So thank you for now. I think you're going to... I don't remember the program. Aphrodite, who's next up? Open your microphone.
Yeah, I have seen that some new people entered. We are putting together a list of participants. So you will now...
Sorry. Aphrodite, your microphone. You haven't opened your microphone.
I didn't, because Veronica started speaking, so
yeah,
okay.
I'm just to make the participant list complete. So those who entered now, please fill it out. It's a link.
Okay, maybe we need to change our plans, because we had sort of booked our best practice presenters for the time slot between 11:45 and 12:30. So if they want to move on, we can start with the best practices and then keep the more theoretical presentation about the cultural stakeholders for the end, which is also a good conclusion, and before the discussion, because I don't want to keep them very long from whatever they have to do. Mr.
I think there is a question, though.
Yeah.
I saw in the chat. I think that someone has a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Verakis. I have a question. Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Thank you very
yes.
much for
Yeah,
your
yeah, sure.
presentation. It's very, very nice. I have a question to ask. You showed us some cases where there was funding provided for the turning of some monuments into thermal baths, and the example, the first one where it didn't happen. Am I right in understanding that whether this is done or so, whatever funding is done by private entrepreneurs because the state's not willing to fund the turning, the restoration of old buildings because of their Ottoman past?
I'm sorry, I haven't. I'm not sure that I understood your question. You're asking if private investors are necessary because the Greek state won't pay for such restorations.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, it's something that we have seen happening. They when we were discussing this specific monument, we didn't have representatives from the Greek Ministry of Culture, but we did have archaeologists from the FOH there, and they were adamant that nowadays the reservations of the Greek state have nothing to do with this sort of bias. So if supposedly if a good plan was put in place, they wouldn't stop it because it would concern an Ottoman building. But of course, we know very well that it could present an issue because sometimes these sort of projects need to be communicated in a certain way also to the local communities, because there is, especially nowadays with the discussions again and again about the Ottoman past, if it constitutes just the heritage of Turks or also the Greek populations of the areas, you may see that this sort of discussion can really turn into some sort of an aggressive understanding of the past and of the cultural heritage. So I think that also we know very well that the Greek state will fund mainly things that become museums. They wouldn't fund easily an investment. And this is also something that we have seen. I don't think that they would rule it out in theory, but in practice, they do not fund investments. They fund only the turning of old buildings into museums. So I think that ultimately, if such a project was to be carried out, of course, you would need to attract private investors. But it is a question of checks and balances, and especially it is a question of mobilizing the local community, because if the local community actually embraced such a project, then the local authorities would be able to attract some investors in better terms and find additional funding from the Ministry of Culture and so on and so forth. Otherwise, if it was just a project coming from outside, I think it would be met with several levels of reservation from different actors, from different stakeholders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So would Mr. Moraros like now to present his museum of olive and olive oil in Gazea? Is he available? I cannot see him.
Yeah, neither can I.
Maybe we can go on with Celia in the beginning. Celia Valantou from University of Peloponnese. Oh, Thessaly is on my mind.
So this is Vaya Panayiotis, also from the laboratory,
okay.
along with Celia. So Celia's
Okay.
online too, but good morning, everyone. If you'd like, I can.
Yes, fine, fine.
Okay. So should I share my presentation?